The first sound was a wheelchair rolling across tile, but the hallway was empty. I froze in the doorway, flashlight beam trembling against peeling paint. The dust here was thick enough to choke a breath, yet the tracks appeared fresh, 2 parallel lines carved into the dirt, leading down the corridor toward the pediatric wing. The air was stale, heavy, smelling of rust and mold, but I could hear something faint underneath it. A dragging, a whispering, the sound of movement where there should be none. My hand brushed against the wall for balance. The plaster crumbled like dried bone. Somewhere above me, a window slammed shut, though no wind blew. Then I saw it, a shadow gliding across the far end of the corridor, stretching too tall for any human shape. The fluorescent light overhead flickered once, twice, then steadied, revealing nothing. My breath hitched. The building seemed to inhale with me, every pipe and hollow vent sighing as though it had lungs of its own. And then, clear and low, a voice whispered from the darkness, "You shouldn't be here." I spun toward it. The corridor ahead seemed to stretch impossibly long, doors slowly creaking open one by one, each revealing nothing but blackness. Something waited inside those rooms, something that already knew my name. The corridor did not end. My flashlight cut through the dark in a thin, shaky beam, but the more I pressed forward, the further the shadows seemed to stretch. Every door stood slightly ajar now, cracked open like 100 mouths waiting to breathe me in. The silence pressed heavy against my ears, broken only by the faint hum of my own breath inside my mask. It was supposed to be abandoned. That was the appeal. The locals whispered about the hospital like it was a cursed landmark, a place you drove past but never entered. A building that refused to rot completely, even though nature had claimed the roof and vines crawled through broken windows. I had told myself it was just a building, just bricks and glass and rust. But as I moved deeper, that thought died in my throat. The smell was stronger here, something metallic, as if the walls themselves bled. Peeling wallpaper curled outward like burned skin. A single gurney leaned against the wall, its wheels locked in place with dried streaks beneath it. I avoided looking too closely. A cold draft swept through, and with it came the faint clatter of metal against tile. I stopped. The sound echoed from the room to my right, one of the half-open doors. I hesitated, every instinct begging me not to look. Still, I pushed it open. Inside was a ward of 4 beds, frames rusting, mattresses collapsed in on themselves. Dust covered everything, thick and undisturbed, except for the one nearest the window. Someone had sat there recently. The dust bore the imprint of a body, the curve of legs swinging down, the faint dip where a head had rested. I raised my flashlight higher. The window was broken. Glass lay scattered inward, not outward. Whatever had come through had entered, not escaped. And then, faint but deliberate, the intercom system crackled above me. Static broke the silence, filling the air with a jagged hiss. I looked up. The speakers hadn't worked in decades, no power. No wires connected. The static bent, twisted, shaped itself into breath. For a moment I thought it would form words, but instead it cut out. Silence returned, heavier than before. I backed out of the ward, nearly stumbling into the hallway wall. My pulse thundered, my body demanding I leave, but my legs carried me forward instead, deeper into the hospital's throat. Everywhere I looked, remnants of the past lingered. Patient charts littered the floor, corners curled with moisture damage. Some were blank, others carried single-line notes, scrawled with a rushed hand. Subject unresponsive. Keep sedated. Screams at night. The last one made me pause. I glanced around as if expecting to find the writer's ghost still crouched nearby, pen scratching against paper. And then I saw the handprints, small, dozens of them, stamped against the paint at knee level, running along the corridor wall like children had once been herded through, reaching out as they were pushed along. My light traced them one by one until they faded into a darker patch where the paint had bubbled and cracked. The shape looked too much like a face pressed against plaster, screaming to be let out. I tried to steady myself with reason. Urban explorers talked about pareidolia, how your mind twisted cracks and shadows into shapes. Nothing supernatural, just psychology, but reason faltered when a voice rasped from behind me. "Don't answer them." I spun. A man stood at the far end of the corridor, where the emergency exit should have been sealed. His clothes hung loose, heavy with dust. like he had been waiting there for years. He leaned on a mop handle, hunched, eyes shadowed beneath his cap. A janitor, or what looked like one. I couldn't tell if he was real. My light stuttered across him, and for a moment his figure wavered like smoke. "What?" My voice cracked, foreign to my own ears. He raised a finger to his lips. "Don't answer. No matter what you hear." I blinked, and he was gone. Nothing remained but the faint outline of shoe scuffs on the dusty tile. A chill ran down my spine, colder than the air around me. Something shifted in the silence. Not footsteps, not whispers, just the weight of the building itself, aware of me now. I gripped the flashlight tighter, chest rising and falling in sharp bursts. The corridor ended in a double set of doors marked Pediatric Ward. The paint was faded, but I could still read the sign above, Children's Recovery Unit. The handles were streaked with tiny brown smears. Old dried. My stomach turned as I reached out. The door creaked open. Inside, the room stretched wider than I expected. Beds were lined in rows, each covered in decaying sheets. Toys lay scattered across the floor. Broken dolls, a stuffed rabbit without a head, a puzzle box missing half its pieces. On the far wall, faint crayon drawings still clung to paper taped above the bed frames. They weren't playful. They weren't innocent. Stick figures lay on operating tables, surrounded by looming shapes with blades for arms. Another drawing showed a child with their mouth sewn shut. The crayon lines cut so deep they had torn holes through the paper. My throat tightened. I wanted to back away, but something near the corner shifted. A ball, half deflated, rolled across the floor and stopped at my feet. A child's laugh followed, soft and hollow. I froze, every hair on my body standing on end. The room fell silent again, leaving only the ball at my shoes, waiting, and for the first time, I felt certain of one thing. I wasn't alone in this hospital. The ball at my feet stopped moving, but the echo of the laugh still clung to the corners of the pediatric ward. It lingered unnaturally, as though it had nowhere else to go. My flashlight beam quivered over the rows of beds, over the dolls with missing eyes, the papers with gouged crayon drawings. The silence that followed was heavier than the sound, like the building was waiting for me to react. I crouched, hand trembling, and nudged the ball back across the floor. It rolled halfway before stopping. I waited, pulse thrumming. No answer, no laugh this time, just the hum of stillness pressing in from every side. That was when the intercom crackled again. A hiss of static filled the room, flattening every sound around me. The voice that emerged was fragmented, broken like a recording chewed up by years of decay. Children's ward. "Keep them quiet." Then, silence. I backed toward the door, each step crunching over bits of broken toys. Something sharp bit into the sole of my boot, a piece of glass from a shattered IV bottle. The crunch echoed like a gunshot. I hated the sound of myself here. Every breath, every motion felt like a violation. And the building hated me back. The corridor outside split into two. To my left, the sign above the peeling paint read, "Records." Something about that word pulled at me, like the answers I didn't want were waiting there. The room was buried in paper. Old files and loose charts lay in damp heaps, spilling from broken cabinets. I stepped carefully, flashlight catching on photographs stapled to the pages. Patients, children, adults, their faces blurred by age and mildew, but some were still visible. Too visible, wide eyes, hollow cheeks, skin strapped with gauze, and beneath each face, in rushed handwriting, "Do not release. Unfit for transfer. Subject refuses silence." One page clung to the wall, preserved by yellowed tape. A newspaper clipping. The headline screamed at me in jagged type. I skimmed the lines, stomach knotting tighter with each word. The fire had started in the pediatric wing. Faulty wiring, they said. Patients and nurses trapped. The hospital shut down after the investigation. But someone had underlined part of the article, pressing the pen so hard it tore through the paper. Survivors speak of voices in the dark. Children crying long after the fire was out. I turned, half expecting to see someone behind me. The room was empty, but the air was warmer here, as if the fire still smoldered in the walls. And then came the whisper, low, near my ear. "We didn't burn." I spun, flashlight beam slashing the dark. Nothing, just paper rustling in a draft. I stumbled out of the records room, My heartbeat choking me, the hallway bent, narrowing. My light skimmed across peeling green tiles, across a rusted sign. Maintenance. The janitor was waiting there. He stood in the half-dark mop handle in hand, back bent but eyes lifted toward me. The same shadowed figure I had seen before. He hadn't moved in hours, it seemed. Or had he? My sense of time was unraveling. "Who are you?" My voice cracked again. He didn't answer at first. Just tapped the mop handle twice against the floor, echo bouncing down the corridor like knuckles on a coffin lid. Finally, he rasped, "I cleaned." And cleaned, but it never left. What never left? He lifted his head slightly. For the first time, I caught the shape of his face under the cap. The skin around his mouth was blackened, blistered. Burn scars, the screams. They're still here. My hand tightened on the flashlight. "Are you alive?" He gave a dry laugh, no humor in it. "Alive enough to warn you. Don't go lower. Not the basement, not the morgue." "Why?" His eyes glimmered, wet in the light. "Because that's where they keep the ones who answer back." Before I could ask more, he turned. His body blurred like smoke again, melting into the shadows. I was left alone with the echo of his warning. The stairwell was colder. My breath fogged faintly in the light. I descended, boots echoing against the metal steps, each clang swallowed almost instantly by the dark. On the landing, an abandoned wheelchair sat facing the wall. Rust had eaten the frame, but the wheels gleamed faintly, as if polished. I passed it carefully. Halfway down the next flight, the sound came. Squeak. The turning of wheels. I froze, every muscle locking. Slowly, I glanced back up. The chair had turned. It faced me now, empty, waiting. I nearly bolted. But something in me refused to show fear, even though it roared inside me. I forced myself to step down past the chair, refusing to look again. At the bottom, I pushed through double doors marked surgical wing. The smell was worse here. Sharp, chemical, as if disinfectant still lingered decades later. Operating tables stood under cracked lamps, their surfaces rusted with old stains. Instruments lay scattered, scalpels, clamps, syringes, though some gleamed like they'd been used recently. And then the sound came again. Not wheels this time, a voice, thin, reedy, from the far corner. "Scalpel." I froze. Another voice, sharper, louder. "Hold them down." My chest seized. I stumbled back, flashlight jerking wildly. The corners of the room writhed with movement, shadows bending, reaching. The intercom sputtered, crackled, then screamed with static. "Begin the procedure." I ran. I didn't mean to find it. But the hospital was folding in on itself, twisting my sense of direction. Corridors looped, exits sealed. Staircases descended only to rise again into the same hallways. And then, suddenly, I was there. The sign above the door read morgue. The janitor's warning rang in my ears, not the basement. Not the morgue. But the door swung open on its own. Inside, drawers lined the walls, metal trays half open, some empty, some covered in stained sheets. The air was freezing. My breath burst out in plumes. I thought I heard dripping. When I turned my light, I saw it. A body bag hanging from a hook, swaying slowly, though no air moved. The zipper began to lower itself. I raised the light, hand shaking so violently I almost dropped it. The bag peeled open, inch by inch. Inside, empty. But a voice spilled out, curling from the hollow space. "You've already been admitted." I staggered back, slamming into a drawer. It rattled open. Inside lay a clipboard, a patient record. My name typed across the top. Admit date today. Status observation. Notes prone to panic. Keep under surveillance. Do not release. The paper trembled in my grip. My vision blurred. That was when I heard them. Dozens of voices, rising at once, chanting in low, rasping tones. They filled the room, though no mouths moved. No bodies stirred. Stay, stay, stay. I dropped the file and ran. Every step pounding like my heart was trying to leave me behind. Back in the corridors, the air felt thicker, pressing against my chest. Every turn led me deeper. The lights flickered, not randomly now, but in rhythm, pulsing like a heartbeat. The walls seemed closer, bending inward. The sound of my boots echoed behind me, but a half step late, like someone walked just out of sight, mimicking me. I tried every exit. Doors led to brick walls. Windows looked out onto nothing but black void. My reflection in a cracked mirror didn't move when I did. Its mouth was open, whispering words I couldn't hear. I slammed the glass with my fist. It didn't break. The reflection smiled. I found the old caretaker in the chapel. Or at least something like him. He was slumped on the pew, rosary in hand, head bowed. His lips moved in prayer, though no sound came. When I approached, his head snapped up. His eyes locked on me with such force I staggered back. "Why are you here?" His voice was low, hoarse, as though scraped raw. I don't know anymore," I admitted. He shook his head slowly. "They called you. That's why you came. Curiosity was just the excuse. What do they want?" His gaze shifted past me toward the shadowed doorway. "They want everyone. They want forever. The hospital doesn't let go." I swallowed hard. "How do I leave?" He leaned forward, eyes wide, urgent. "You don't." The lights above us flickered violently, plunging the chapel into stuttering darkness. When they steadied again, the caretaker was gone. The rosary remained, beads scattered across the pew. I stumbled into the hallway again, more lost than ever, the building breathing around me. The whispers rose louder, overlapping, layering until they sounded like a crowd just out of sight. I clutched my flashlight tighter, pulse screaming in my ears, and I finally realized I hadn't been exploring an abandoned hospital. The hospital had been exploring me. The hospital was no longer a building. It pulsed. It breathed. Its corridors curved like arteries, each doorway a valve opening and closing on its own. My flashlight barely cut the dark, as though the air had thickened into liquid, swallowing the beam whole. I ran, though I didn't know why. There was nowhere left to run. Every hall bent back into itself. Every exit slammed shut. The whispers rose louder than before, layered like 100 voices pressed into one chorus. "Stay, stay, stay," I screamed into the dark. "What do you want from me?" The whispers paused. Then, in a voice that was not one but many, the answer came. Everything. The corridor spat me out into the surgical wing again, though I had tried to avoid it. The lamps above flickered alive with a violent buzz, flooding the room with jaundiced light. Instruments gleamed on trays. Shadows leaned long against the walls, stretched and twisted, yet no bodies cast them. Then the voices shifted, snapping sharp. "Scalpel. Clamp. Hold them down." The instruments lifted off the trays as if unseen hands gripped them. They hovered, trembling in the stale air, my legs locked. My body refused to move. One of the gurneys screeched across the floor, stopping just in front of me. Its straps flapped open, inviting, and then pressure. Invisible hands forced me back. I thrashed, fought, but the weight was relentless. The gurney straps curled around my wrists, my ankles pulling tight, cutting into my skin. "No. Let me go!" The intercom hissed. A cold, calm voice filtered through, each word deliberate, patient, secured. "Procedure may begin." Surgical lights blazed above, blinding. Shadows leaned over me, faces blurred, masked. But their eyes, rows of hollow black sockets, watched hungrily. A scalpel hovered above my chest, point glinting. Incision. The blade descended. I screamed, and in that scream, the lights shattered. Darkness swallowed the room whole. When the glass rained down, the straps were gone. The gurney lay empty. The scalpel clattered harmlessly to the floor. I staggered back, chest heaving, skin slick with sweat. The echoes of the voices lingered, overlapping like a broken recording, but I knew the reprieve wouldn't last. I stumbled through another corridor, searching for any exit. When I found the elevator, its doors stood open, waiting, though the power should have been gone decades ago. Inside, the panel glowed faintly red. Only one button was lit. Basement. The janitor's warning roared in my mind. Not the basement. Not the morgue, but the voices pushed against me now, hissing through the vents, urging, "Go down. Go down." And something in me moved without permission. My finger pressed the button. The doors sealed shut. The elevator lurched violently, dropping fast. Too fast. My stomach rose in my chest as the floor shuddered beneath me. The lights inside flickered, dying, leaving me in near darkness. Then, from the corner of the elevator, a whisper curled into my ear. "You're one of us now." I spun. No one there. Just the reflection in the polished steel walls. Except my reflection didn't move. It stared back at me. lips twisting into a smile I didn't wear. Its mouth opened wide, whispering words I couldn't hear over the grinding of the elevator, and then the doors opened. The morgue was waiting. Drawers lined the walls, hundreds of them. Most hung half open, sheets draped loosely, bodies twitching beneath. The air was freezing, thick with the smell of damp earth and old blood. Every drawer shuddered, rattling in rhythm as though the bodies inside were trying to break free. Then, one by one, the sheets peeled back, faces stared out. Burned, blistered eyes melted shut. Mouths opened, all at once, and the sound that poured out was worse than any scream. It was laughter, children, adults, nurses, doctors, all laughing, overlapping into a roar of madness. I staggered back, shaking my head. No, this isn't real. But the laughter cut off, replaced by a single phrase spoken in unison. You've been admitted. The drawers slid open further. Figures began to rise, limbs twisted, broken, dragging themselves toward me. Some crawled, some floated, their mouths still moving in silent chants. I bolted for the hallway. The corridor stretched forever, flickering between decades. One step landed on cracked linoleum, the next on polished tiles glowing with fluorescent light. The hospital alive again. I stumbled through time, walls peeling and repairing in an endless cycle. At one turn I passed nurses rushing with charts, their faces blurred. At the next, fire licked the walls, smoke choking the air. Children screaming for help. The voices clawed at my mind. This is forever. You never leave. We keep the ones who scream. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it didn't help. The voices were inside me now. The hallway ended in double doors marked administration. They swung open before I touched them. Inside was an office, untouched by decay. The desk was neat. Papers stacked, a clock ticking. Behind the desk sat a man in a doctor's coat. His face was pale, sharp, his eyes dark hollows. He looked up at me and smiled thinly. You made it. My mouth was dry. Who are you? He folded his hands. I ran this hospital. I still do. We don't turn anyone away. I shook my head violently. I'm not a patient. His smile widened. You are now. He slid a clipboard across the desk. My name was written at the top. Beneath it, status, permanent resident. I stumbled back, chest heaving. No, I'm leaving. His eyes flickered and the walls of the office bled. Paint bubbled, peeling away to reveal charred wood beneath. Shadows dripped from the ceiling like ink. The doctor rose, towering, his coat burning into ash that floated in the air. His voice split, layered into many. No one leaves. The office dissolved, the desk sinking into the floor. Behind him, the walls cracked open to reveal rows of faces pressed inside. Patients. Children, nurses, screaming silently, their mouths wide. The doctor stepped forward. Shadows crawling with him. You are ours now. My flashlight sputtered and died. Darkness swallowed me. I ran blind, hands scraping against wet walls, lungs heaving. The corridors shifted underfoot, tilting, spiraling. The whispers rose into screams. Every door I passed slammed open, voices spilling out. Stay with us. Lie down. The procedure isn't finished. My body weakened, legs trembling as though the air itself drained me. My head spun, and then, suddenly, silence. I froze. The hall stretched before me, impossibly long. At the far end, I saw myself, standing still. Watching me, my double smiled, raised a hand, and whispered in my voice, "Welcome home." The lights blew out all at once, and the hospital closed in. The silence after was worse than the screams. I don't remember leaving the hospital. Not the stairs, not the shattered entrance, not the journey back to my car. One moment I was standing in a hallway lined with locked doors that had opened on their own, and the next I was sitting behind the wheel, hands trembling so hard the keys barely fit into the ignition. When the engine coughed to life, I expected relief. Instead, the hospital loomed in the rear view, its windows lit from within, though the power had been cut decades ago. And in one of those upper windows, a figure stood, watching. I didn't drive home that night. I just drove. Miles of highway blurred into nothing, until dawn bled gray across the horizon. The sun should have burned away the dread, but it clung to me like the hospital's mildew stink. In my clothes, in my lungs, in my thoughts. For days, I avoided mirrors. At night, I could still hear the wheels of that chair scraping along tile. Once, while brushing my teeth, I swore I saw a pale hand resting on the bathroom door frame. When I turned, it was gone. I told no one. Who would believe me? And yet, sometimes people notice the change. A coworker whispered, "You look like you've seen a ghost." I laughed it off, though my laugh sounded wrong. Hollow. Weeks passed, then months. I tried to bury the memory, but it never buried me. The voices followed. In quiet moments, I still heard them. "You shouldn't be here. Stay." They didn't come from inside my head. They came from the shadows. The first true proof came when I returned home one evening to find my bedroom door ajar. I never left it open. On the floor lay fresh wheel tracks, pressed into the carpet as if something heavy had rolled in circles while I was gone. My body went cold and I could not move. I slept in the car that night. And the next. But you can't run from something that doesn't belong to one place. I began to notice other survivors too. People who had gone inside abandoned hospitals and never come out the same. Their eyes looked like mine, always watching corners, flinching at silence. I asked one man in a cafe if he'd ever been to St. Margaret's. His hand shook so violently his coffee spilled. He whispered, "Don't say its name." That's when I understood. The hospital isn't abandoned. It never was. It's alive, feeding, waiting, stretching its halls into the lives of anyone who dares enter. The records say it closed in 1979, but I know the truth. It never closed. Its patients never left, and now, neither have I. Every night I dream of those endless corridors, doors creaking open into voids that whisper my name. Sometimes I wake to find I'm standing in my hallway, facing the front door, hand on the knob as if about to leave. To go back. Maybe one day I will. Maybe I already have. Because this morning, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see my reflection. I saw a bed, a white sheet pulled tight, and something lying beneath it, rising and falling with breath. I live outside the hospital, but the hospital lives inside me, and if you listen closely, right now, as you read this, you'll hear it too. The wheels. The whisper, "You shouldn't be here."